Hi, welcome to AI Evals and Analytics podcast. We're Stella and Amy. This is Stella.
This is Amy.
In our last episode, we talked about why we believe data science skills are very relevant to AI evals and why data scientists should invest themselves in AI evals. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about when and how to build AI evals from scratch.
In a way, this should be the first episode, but but due to personal interest, last episode, we strongly believe we need to draw attention from the data science community that evals is very promising career path in the next few years. And today we will discuss how to build AI evals from scratch with an example. So first of all, Stella, when should we start thinking about AI evals? Should it be the first day we're building AI products, or should it be when we actually get traction?
Yeah, from the people that we have talked to so far, I think most of them only started to think about AI evals right before the launch of the product. And they see AI evals as their password fail gates, the evidence they use to support their release decisions. But I believe AI evals should start from the first day of AI product development.
Yeah, apparently you hang out with different people. A lot of people I know only think about evals after the launch, not even right before the launch. But yes, we should start AI evals work day one. This is what we call evaluation driven development. It's actually going to be easier in the long run. It doesn't take you more time. And we'll talk about more of that in this episode.
Lately, I try to compare software testing to AI evaluations. With software testing, I think everyone is now on the same page that we should start planning for testing from day one. And it is the same with AI evaluations.
Yeah. Instead of postponing the problem, think about what you need to evaluate for your product on day one and actually plan for it will make product development a lot easier.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do a lot of duct taping later when you discover the problem is actually bigger than you realize. We often talk about ship and pray in our content. You don't ship the AI product and then pray it works. This is a common pattern with a lot of AI products because people don't have user yet. They are afraid they're going to be slower than their competitors. So they decide to ship first and then pray it works. Once we get user, we'll fix the problems, but it's often too late and cause catastrophic consequences.
And also, many people are reluctant to do AI evals because they see AI evals as potential blockers or something that can slow them down. But that is not the case. AI evaluations can actually inform your product design, and it should inform your product design.
These are just very high level discussion on AI evals. Today we're actually going to walk you through an example. Say that we are going to build a customer chatbot for insurance company that answers, this is a very common use case, that answers policy questions. Maybe the patient want to ask about their claim status, their deductible. We'll use this as an example in this episode to walk you through when should we start working on evals.
Yeah. In order to have a more concrete discussion, let's also narrow down the scope of this chatbot a little bit. Let's say that this chatbot is only for medical insurance. So it answers questions regarding medical insurance policies or claims.
As the discussion moves on, you will realize this is actually more complicated than you think.
Yeah.
So the first thing I can think of is this is a medical insurance chatbot, so it can only answer questions about insurance, but it cannot provide any medical advice.
Yep.
It is fair to say that would be the bottom line of this chatbot.
Yep. So that can be one requirement from the PRD, product requirements document, which is define the knowledge boundary or the topical boundary of this chatbot. Let's now say that we are on this product development team of this customer chatbot for medical insurance. What are the intended use cases of this product?
So this chatbot should answer some simple policy related questions such as what's my deductible?
That is a very common question.
Yeah, it's a very common and seemingly simple questions, but let's dive in and look at how complicated it could be.
Mm.
um,
What else?
I would want to ask about the status of my claim. Like I filed the insurance claim, when am I gonna get the money, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so these are the intended use cases. What are the unintended use cases? What we do not want users use this chatbot for?
I don't want it to just chat about anything with my chatbot. That would be a waste of my resources. Also, even riskier is we don't want the chatbot to provide any medical advice.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. Also, we don't want this chatbot to leak any personal information.
So with that, we actually have a plain English version of what we want to evaluate with this AI product.
I would imagine the first part, which is to answer policy related questions and then claim related questions, these are considered accuracy. Like, is it providing accurate information? And that would be our evaluation metric for the first part.
Yep.
And and for the second part, we're actually evaluating the safety level of this chatbot. Does it accidentally leak information or provide advice it shouldn't be giving? These are more guardrails, safety related guardrails.
For example, if I ask the chatbot a question regarding my claim, I don't want this chatbot to return any personal information of myself, or if it returns any like health information, if I'm only asking for a claim status check. Besides PII and PHI leakage, we also want to check for knowledge boundary of this chatbot. We don't want this chatbot to give medical advice to users. And that in itself is another guardrail evaluation that we need to run.
So all of these become the requirements. Once we have these product requirements, we can start what we call evaluation driven development. And then the next step is actually translating these requirements into quantifiable metrics.
Evaluation driven development is a new term that we coined. And when we talk about evaluation driven development, you may naturally think about test driven development, and it is very similar. With evaluation driven development, evaluations should feed back to the product design. We can use evaluations to help us make design decisions. For example, if we have an agent that is responsible for the knowledge boundary of this chatbot, we can use evaluations to help us pick the best model or pick the best design to make sure that this knowledge boundary agent meets the requirements that we set in our PRD. Okay, now we're aligned what to evaluate. And we're also aligned that this needs to happen at the beginning of the product development cycle. What do we do next?
The next step is to create the evals metrics that we need to follow. And earlier on, we were talking about first accuracy and safety. There could be more, but let's say that these are the two evals metrics we want to have for the insurance chatbot.
Accuracy can actually be a very loaded term. What exactly do we mean by accuracy?
Yeah, with these eval metrics, we actually need to define specifically what do we mean by that in the PRD. First of all, accuracy, we are only interested in whether it provides accurate information about the person's policy and whether it provides accurate information about the person's claim. These are the use case we are interested in, and so we are only interested in the accuracy of these scenarios.
So, for example, if my deductible is $500, but the chatbot tells me that my deductible is $1,000, then it's not accurate.
Yes. So once we define what accuracy means in our scenario, we can start the dataset curation step. These datasets consist of question-answer pair. It's pretty simple. We just walk through a few examples. What are my deductible? That is the question. The answer should be your deductible is $500, and that would be the accurate answer. So these questions can be sourced from subject matter experts inside your team, inside your company, who knows the best what kind of questions the chatbot could get.
In some cases, you may also be able to curate the data set from historical data that your company collects. In our case, maybe you have a call center and maybe you have transcripts from your call center of customers calling in, asking questions about policy and claims, and that can be an excellent source for your dataset curation.
What is not recommended is actually to use AI to generate 1,000 sample for this data set. You could use AI as a tool if you understand your use case very well and you are confident that the AI generated data set fits your needs. Otherwise, it is always better to have subject matter expert or use actual data from your company as your data set.
Because at the end of the day, we're doing AI evals because we want to use the scores from AI evals to predict the performance or the reliability of this AI product in production. So the data set that we curate where we use in AI evaluations, we want it to be as close to real world use cases as possible. We want it to be representative.
In this step, quality matters a lot more than quantity. We want to emphasize that because a lot of AI evals miss this step. They curate a large number of sample sizes and it doesn't help. It doesn't help when you have a million ways of asking what's my deductible. The diversity and the quality of the data matters.
Right. The next question is, how big should our test set be?
This is a very difficult question.
Yeah, we found out this is a question that is rarely discussed in AI evals community today.
It's rarely discussed because in practice, there's no established formula yet.
Yeah. And the formula that we came up with is actually the first one. But long story short, the calculation of an effective test set size can be very similar to estimating the size of an effective survey, which we discuss in details in our newsletter, Data Science by AI.
You may be surprised that you don't need thousands of question answer pairs in your data set. Quality is more important to quantity. So when you are curating this data set, don't stress yourself over the number. Be more intentional about the quality of the data set. Yeah. So we just went through how to start a simple evals for the accuracy evals metric. Let's do the same thing for the safety metric.
Earlier, we identified knowledge boundary to be one of the guardrail eval metrics that we want to check. As a quick refresher, knowledge boundary meaning that this chatbot should not answer questions that is outside its designed use case or use cases. For example, it should not provide medical advices. And how do we test that?
This will focus more on the answer part, right? In all the answers of the question answer pair, there shouldn't be any medical advice.
Yeah, and also if a user explicitly asks for medical advice, the chatbot should refuse to answer such questions, maybe with a can answer or a straight I don't know. So for us to evaluate this guardrail, we will need to curate a data set, a test set, with questions explicitly or implicitly asked for medical advice. And for each of those, we should check in the response from the chatbot that it does not give medical advice back to the users. This might be a case where you do want to leverage AI to generate some synthetic data or use AI to augment your test set for this guardrail check. Similarly, for the PI leakage guardrail check, you will have a test set that is very specific to PI leakage with explicit or implicit asks from potential users for health information and check to see if the chatbot do respect the guardrail and avoid giving out any PI or PHI data to the users in the responses.
Once you have the metrics and the data set ready, you can start evaluation-driven development by running through this test data set whenever you have a change in your AI product. Do you need to reach 100%?
That is a great question. With generative AI, I don't think we will ever get to 100%, at least not with this generation of frontier models. So again, it goes back to the PRD. It is very important that we define or we set the expectation at the beginning of the product development lifecycle. For accuracy, what is the expected score? Or with safety, what is the expectation there? And goes back to our earlier point of using evaluations to inform design decisions. If the accuracy is 100%, then you may want to ask the question to your product team whether you do want to use AI for this product or not.
That is a fair question, but I don't think anyone will actually bring it up.
Yeah. But I think what you alluded to, Amy, is how do we use evaluation metrics for release decisions?
So in practice, do we mean that in the PRD, there will be requirements such as we need to achieve 95% accuracy, but for safety, we need to achieve 98%? Is that how we define whether we pass or fail these AI evals metrics?
It really depends on the AI product. In our example, we have talked about 2 or 3 different metrics for this chatbot. All these metrics can become very handy during development. But when it comes to release decisions, they are not equally important in that decision-making process. Taking accuracy as an example, an accuracy score of, let's say, 0.94 versus 0.95. Is there really a big difference in different scores?
It's really not a big difference.
But when it comes to safety eval metrics, they play a much more important role in release decisions. With this example, we actually did a lot of simplifications. In reality, in practice, there are actually more evaluation metrics that we can add to the process. For example, we can add a hallucination score, or we can also add helpfulness score to check if the chatbot is always helpful. And we can also check for tone, we can check for toxicity, we can check for bias and fairness. There are much more eval metrics that we can choose from besides the ones that we discussed in details today.
Yes, but don't get overwhelmed by all these eval metrics. The important thing is to start something that's most critical to your use case. Here you have it. You have a basic setup for AI evals from scratch. Now you know when and how to build AI evals. When is a very simple answer. You need to build it from day one. How the scope can be expanded, but first you need to decide what's the most important AI evals metric for your use case specifically. In the next episode, we'll talk about how to translate these eval metrics to business impact, which is a critical step for bringing AI evals into leadership decisions. So stay tuned for our next episode.
See you next time.